Some of the biggest names in digital media are still running blind ad networks, and advertisers, they keep buying. Why is that? Because sometimes blind works better than a transparent ad network in certain situations. Let's break down the differences, and if you're a publisher or an ad network owner, we'll look at which model might make the most sense for you. I'm James Deaker. I'm the Yield Doctor. I run a consulting practice that focuses on these types of problems. So if you're grappling with them, you're in the right place. I previously did a video on retail media networks that I'll link to here. And in it, I talked about the differences between a blind network and a transparent ad network. And in that discussion said it probably would warrant its own video. So here we are. The first thing I need to clarify is the key attributes of a blind ad network. If you do a web search on blind ad network, the definition will come up and reference things like the impressions that are purchased by the ad network are not available to the buyer. In other words, they are blind to the delivery. Now, if we rewind the clock a decade or more, this is exactly the type of model that advertising.com used many years ago. They would take budgets from advertisers who would give them money, and in return, ad.com would drive some kind of outcome, usually a click or an action or some other type of thing that was of value to the advertiser. This is a passable definition for a blind ad network, but I think it's increasingly obsolete for a number of reasons. The first is that in a world where advertisers are increasingly seeing non-human traffic and fraudulent traffic, advertisers just aren't prepared to accept the just trust me kind of hand waving from ad networks. They are demanding transparency around delivery, and in some cases, the ad networks are giving them at least partial visibility. So in doing so, they're staying blind to a potentially more important element of the ad network, which is that the blind ad networks tend to hide their margins and their cost of their inventory. So increasingly, the key distinction for a blind ad network is less about the transparency of the inventory and more about the transparency of the business model. Now, some commentators in our industry say that all ad networks should be transparent, with the implication that being transparent on all or most dimensions, the delivery, the economics, the fees, etc., is a better thing than being blind. I'm not going to take that position. Blind ad networks can be useful as long as they can be relied on for trusted key dimensions. In recent times, they have tended to be successful in an environment where a tech company owns a platform, or for example, it could be ad tech, it could be a social media platform, or it could be search. And in return, they reach a desire from advertisers who want to participate and don't demand the level of transparency that they might otherwise. So again, it could be a large social platform, it could be a large retail media network who is running a blind ad network to expand its reach. As one might expect, a transparent ad network is the exact opposite. They are generally transparent on where the delivery is occurring and on how fees are assigned and accrued. So all of this is a little theoretical, and so I want to give an example of how this might work in practice and what the advertiser sees. First, let's look at the transparent ad network and an example where the advertiser is spending $100. And let's assume that that $100 is spent on 3 different sites. The ad network has disclosed that they take a 10% margin. And in general, when they run the campaign, that margin will be the same across all the inventory. So in this graphic, I'll draw your attention to the fact that the $100 that is given to the ad network $10 is retained by the ad network, and the $90 goes on to the publishers in direct proportion to their spend. Now, let's look at the same model or the same example, but for the blind ad network. They also get given the $100, but now the advertisers don't know where it is spent. If we were actually able to follow the money flow, we might see that the spend that arrives at the publisher site is $40, $25, and $18. So in this example, the publisher is getting paid a total of $83, and the ad network is keeping more. They're keeping $17. Now, I'm putting numbers against each of these flows, the $10, the $5, and the $2, and those numbers merely reflect the fact that the ad network may have negotiated different arrangements with each of those publishers. The arrangements could be in the form of revenue share or some other arrangement. It is possible that the ad network is not even tracking the profit on each one of the flows with each one of the publishers. So let's now compare side by side the blind ad network and the transparent ad network. And I'm going to make some generalizations because I have to. The first two rows we've already talked about, the business model and the inventory blindness. One thing that we haven't talked about is how each of the ad network types adds value. A blind ad network, if, and again I say if, it doesn't own its own inventory, generally needs to have a good relationship with publishers in order to get access to inventory, or they need to have a really good algorithm for delivery. Transparent ad networks, on the other hand, tend to differentiate by the quality of their user experience. And of course, here the user experience we're talking about is the advertisers. They basically want to give the advertisers the controls and the reports that the advertiser is looking for. At this end of the spectrum, the difference between a transparent ad network and a DSP potentially really starts to blur. The other key difference is that for a blind ad network, they have traditionally been focused on lower cost, performance-oriented inventory. And transparent ad networks tend to have operated at higher prices. The major exception to this is one that I already mentioned. If you are a blind ad network run by a social media company or potentially a high quality retail media network, they tend to operate at higher prices than the blind ad networks run by performance advertisers. So, with all of that context, if you are a publisher and you are thinking about a model, which one is right for you? This is a major decision, and it's often one that publishers don't think about enough. They say to themselves, I'm limited by the amount of inventory that I am selling on my owned and operated. I think I'll develop an audience extension product that will allow me to sell onto other sites. And then, without even realizing it, they've created a blind ad network by default. And again, blind ad networks often have higher margins, but then you need to set up the systems to ensure that the quality of the delivery on those other sites is the same as your owned and operated. If it's not, you're going to get a lot of complaints from your advertisers. So, in short, both can work, but you need to pause and think about what each model will do for your business and how advertisers will react to each model 1, 2, 3 years down the road. So, blind versus transparent isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some of the biggest platforms in digital media run blind ad networks, and they run them successfully, while others are fully transparent. I'm James Deaker, I'm the Yield Doctor, and if you'd love to hear more about which model you think gives you the most advantage, please drop your thoughts and comments down below, or subscribe for more insights. And if you want guidance tailored to your business, get in touch. This is the kind of thing I do every day.